From Pine Tree to Palm Tree, this is your host, Trevor White, with his lovely co-host,
Danielle.
What up? I probably thought this was somebody else.
Like mice this whole time.
We thought somebody else has hijacked the show today. No, they have not hijacked the show. This is the host with the most, and you're the host with the least most.
Hostess with the mostest.
Mostest hostess. You look awesome today.
Thanks.
By
I'm
the
kind
way.
of cold. Should have worn a sweater with less holes.
You look like you're wearing your grandma's little knit thing that she would put on her table. What are those called? Doily. Yes. Isn't that a doily? Is that a doily styled shirt you got going on here?
It's called crochet top. Not sure.
It's crochet. But it doesn't kind of look like a doily?
To an untrained professional, yes.
Well, we've established this in many other episodes. I am not a trained professional when it comes to fitness. But you will notice today, I do not have a tank top on.
Nope. You are fully clothed.
I am
Good
fully
job.
clothed. Well done, me.
Good job.
But you did wear pants and you wore jeans to the beach.
I always wear jeans to the beach this time of night because it's cold.
It's not cold.
It is. It's a little chilly. The wind's blowing.
Tell me you've lived in Hawaii for a couple of years without telling me you've lived in Hawaii a couple of years. It is currently 75 degrees and you're cold.
But there's like a brisk air.
It's called the trade winds, and I don't think it's that brisk.
My eyes are like dry. I think I need
Your
new
eyes are
contacts.
dry?
Yeah.
So
if I'm blinking a lot, that's why.
Didn't you just change your contacts out?
No.
No?
I kind of milk them for all they're worth, and then I change them out because they're expensive. And
just because?
That's just what I've always done.
That's what you do?
Yep.
That's the strategy. I like it.
Make them last as long as possible.
Well, how's your day been today?
Good.
Yeah?
It's been a good
Why
day.
has it been good?
Been productive. I went on a run, which is always nice. I always get good thoughts when I'm running. I decided I'm going to run more.
Yeah. You found a new road, I guess, running?
No, I didn't take that one because that one goes through neighborhood. I ran the original route. There's less traffic.
But where's this new road? You said you found a new road that led straight to the Ohana.
Oh, no, it was a neighborhood. Yeah. Well, remember that walk we went on with our friends and there was that bridge through the golf course and then we ended up in an older neighborhood?
Yep.
So that's that road.
Okay.
So if I kept running, I could run in that neighborhood and around over to
so
Estates.
to take you over to their house. Oh, which is
great. So the girls can totally ride bikes and not even be on the main road at all.
No, that's great. I know. Because we have an e-bike that Lyra can ride. I bought 2 years ago when I didn't have a car because our car was on a boat.
Yeah.
I was traveling here and it didn't make sense to me to buy a car for 2 weeks. I guess it was like 3 weeks.
Yeah.
I don't know. It was probably like 3 weeks. Something like that. So.
Yeah, but she can ride the bike to her friend's house. So
that's
nice.
good. So you went on a run today. What else did you do today?
I went on a run, lifted a little bit of shoulders, checked in with all my clients, recorded a podcast.
Nice. What's the name of your podcast for those of the people that listen to this one and don't realize that you actually you are the host, the only host. You ride that one solo.
Yep.
So it's probably way less entertaining because I'm not on it, but it's probably way more valuable because I'm not on it.
So, it's called Empower Her Plate. So it's all about just finding balance with your food. It's all like it's health and fitness based, but we talk about I just kind of look at what I'm coaching a lot in, and I look at what my clients are facing and what I'm dealing with and things that have helped me with like maybe in the past. So it's mostly health and fitness based with a side of like life, like being a woman, in her 40s. Sometimes like I'll share like tricks and stuff that I have been doing to keep myself fit in my 40s. But most of it's geared around like your relationship with food and relationship with your body.
Yeah.
So, and then just tactics that we can use like right now on how to overcome sabotage and just basically some topics are like my lessons that I'm learning. And then I challenge, I'm like, well, hopefully you can see this in your own life and shift. So
I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. So
it's been really fun.
Yeah, it's a fun project to watch you do. And I know it makes a big difference for people. So that's awesome.
Yeah.
It's awesome. Well, good job on getting that done.
Thanks.
I'm kind of in a funk today, I think. I think I'm in a funk day.
Yeah?
Yeah, I don't know why. It's kind of weird. It's just how it happens. Life is so crazy because it's just that way.
Yeah.
Some days you just wake up and you're like, I'm not feeling it. Life sucks today. And it just is what it is. I don't know. I had all the client calls. They all went great. Everything was good. It was a busy day. I was able to finagle in the gym in the midst of everything else because your car decided to break. So I don't even think that wasn't broken last week, right? So we
No.
didn't even talk. Yeah, your car decided to break, so we got to get in the shop. So we're back to a one-car family, which
It's kind of tricky,
cry us a little violin. I get it,
but it is tricky. And
but it is when you're used to two and being able to have the autonomy to go here and there, and then to
Yeah.
not all of a sudden. And
yeah, it's fine.
it's been all right. It's been all right. It's one of those days. I don't feel like before we jump in, because just so you guys know, today is day 3. It's the conclusion,
Part 3, the
of
finale.
What's Your 77? And we are coming out with shirts with that. We are absolutely going to do it. Now, whether we'll sell them to myself only, probably what will happen. So you probably can't get a shirt, but I'm going to have a shirt made for myself that says, what is your 77? I just think it's a great idea and concept. But before we get into that, part 3, the conclusion, I think I wanted to touch on this kind of the funk I'm having. And just the point made, even though I'm in a funk today, how much do you think that impacted what I got done?
Well, probably nothing, just because you practice discipline and just doing the work anyways.
It's nothing. It's nothing. Like, the secret to success is just keep doing the things you know you need to do and do them every single day.
Yep.
And that's just, today was just a testament, a lesson to me in that respect. And you're looking at it, it's like, well, what needs to be done? And I know it needs to be done. And so I'm going to go do the things that need to be done today. And there is no other, it doesn't matter. Like your feelings, my feelings, how I feel today, like all of it, it's not relevant, right? It's just not relevant. It doesn't mean everything I did was, executed at a level, 10,000, but everything was done today. Everything at least to this point, I've still got some things I have to do, and the day's not over yet. So, but it's just like, sometimes you have those days and sometimes you just got to keep going. Like there's just no other way around it.
Yeah. Well, and in life, what I've learned is like consistency is key along with everything. Like if you're out to create anything or you have goals, like you just got to be consistent.
Yeah.
And every day is not going to be 100. And I think that's what people get confused with, is like they expect to be 100% every day to be productive.
Right.
And so when they're not 100%, they're like, oh, I'm not productive today. Maybe they just stop trying, or they'll quit and start again tomorrow. But it's like, even if you show up and you're only giving 30, that's 100% of what you have today. So it's like the 30% is still going to add up in the end.
Oh yeah. It's a simple action. Well, I heard a great analogy on this and I love it. It's in football, right? 10 yards. Every 10 yards, you get a first down, right? It resets the downs.
Yeah.
And you really get 4 downs to do that. But really, players usually punt on 4th down. Or teams usually punt on 4th down. So you only get 3 downs, right? So there's 3 downs, which means in order for you to get a new set of downs, you got to go 3.4 yards per down to get a first down.
Okay.
So that's all you have to do. Like if you did that and you average,
that's like actually kind of small.
It is.
That's not very many
it's
yards.
It's not very far. And if you could do that every down, then you would score and win, and you would score, and you would never not score. You would keep scoring, and every down you would you do your 3 downs and you reset it back to your start one, and you just keep pushing that way. And that's really what that's what it is. That's what today was for me. It was like, you know what, we're going to get bloody, we're going to get bludgeoned, we're going to go straight up the middle. I just got to get 3.4 miles or 3. I keep saying miles. I'm used to miles because we're talking about 77 miles. What's your 77, right? But you just got to get that 3.4 yards. And do it again tomorrow and do it again tomorrow. And some days, 3.4, so I'm going to be tough to tackle at 3.4. So I might get 5, right? I might get 6, and then there's days that, man, I try my hardest and I get 2.
Yeah.
Right. And some days sometimes it's a loss. It's a loss for down. So that's where averaging that 3.4. But I think that's critical because that's not a lot of distance. It's not a hard thing to do. And I could do my 3.4 today. Just like when we were talking about, last show. And as we kind of dive into today's, the conclusion of the 77, it's where I had to realize I had to bite this entire run around the Kauai Islands down 1 mile at a time, right? It wasn't anything other than that. I couldn't think of the big picture. I was doomed, done for if I did that, or if I allowed myself mentally to go there, because there was no way I was going to have the space or the time to, I just wouldn't have the energy to be able to mentally to keep going. It would overwhelm me and kind of find me in a rough spot. So diving into it though, let's see we are basically right in where it's getting dark, right? It's where we kind of concluded from the part 2. So if you haven't listened to part 2, go listen to part 2. And if you haven't listened to part 1, start there. That's a better option. Start one. Part 1.
Yeah, you might be a little confused.
Yeah, part 1 was a little bit short because if you listen to it, you remember we got rained on. The rain decided to come. That's one of the luxuries of living on a tropical island, is it just decides to rain sometimes out of nowhere. And then when it rains, it just comes really intensely. And so we wrapped it up. So, but now we're into part 3. It's become nighttime. I called you and had you come over and meet me so I could get all my reflective gear, my butt lamp and my headlamp and all the things ready to go. And I start going off, on this first little stretch. I'm on the busy road. There's still a lot of traffic because it's not quite dark, but it's like dark, but it's like getting there. And I knew on this part of the run, it was going to be completely dark. So before we jump in, what was going through your mind as it started to get dark? Like, because I know you were worried about my safety and stuff all that time. But now I'm out on the main highway in between Kapa'a and Lahui. It's pretty busy. It's 50 miles an hour on that road. There is not much of a shoulder to speak of in some places. And I know you know that. There's a guardrail. There's all these things. So what's going on? What's going on for you as you kind of gave me all the gear and you whipped around and then headed down the road?
At that point, I kind of got a little bit more anxious just because we were heading towards Kapa'a, which is a busier city. And to be 100% honest, I wasn't really worried about your safety because we'd been going all day.
Yeah.
And I realized that, like, we were in the safest part. Like, the highways, yes, but I also know that you would walk some of the narrow parts. Your headlamp was super bright, but I noticed that I became a little bit more anxious on where I was going to be able to pull over and how I was going to be able to, like, help you because it's dark and I don't have, like, a big truck where I could just kind of pull over into anything. So my anxiety started to kind of creep in a little bit because I was like, I just wanted to make sure I was where I needed to be. And I don't know the terrain. Like, I don't know the island well enough at all to be like, oh, I could pull off here. So I felt a little anxious going, like, as it started getting dark, for that reason. And then, I don't know, I wasn't quite tired yet, but I knew I was just waiting for it to hit me to be tired, to be honest. But for the most part, I was just like in the zone of just getting it done. Like, I really didn't think about much other than, all right, now it's dark. Now I got to clock myself and go 4 miles up and see where I land. And it was in, like, the busiest part of the island.
Yep. At this point, we're rolling through. We're coming up into Kapa'a. It's now totally dark. My legs are definitely tired, but I did feel I'm still riding the high of the Whopper. The Whopper from Burger King to save the day. I'm still feeling the power and the strength from that. But something happened in this 4-mile stretch. I started to feel the bowels start to make some moves.
Oh, yeah.
The bowels started to make some moves, and I'm like, I'm not sure what to do, where to go, all this stuff. And so I'm like, I'm fine. I'm going to somehow, but I'm very aware somehow, at some point I'm going to have to take care of this problem that I'm experiencing. It's kind of cramping a little bit. So you handed me some TP in case I had to duck off on the side of the road. And so I had some toilet paper. I shoved it in my pocket. But I get to you in the next check spot. And this next one was all the way through into Kapa'a, like in the city. Like, so we'd gone through. And what was crazy is we both had FOMO because we show up through Kapa'a, which is the biggest city on Hawaii. But just so y'all know, it's not a big city. I think.
But there was the most people I've ever seen in one place on this island ever.
Yes.
It was crazy. It felt like I was in a big city for a second, like people on both sides of the road, mobs.
It was
and I was driving through and I was like, oh, how is he going to navigate all these people?
Oh my gosh. I know I'm running through and I'm a dripping, sweating mess.
Yeah.
And I know I don't smell good. There's no way. I'm about 45 miles at this point. And so, and I'm sweating to death. Like, it's still super humid and hot. And as I'm going through and there's people everywhere. So I get into the city and there's so many people. There's nowhere I can't run. Like, there's just not possible because there's just too many people. So I have to walk. And then I kind of walked in the road for a little bit, but then there's like so much traffic coming right through there that was kind of sketchy. And then I go on the sidewalk and I'm like trying to not accidentally bump somebody because I'm like full on dripping sweat, wet, and people are all dressed up nice because there was like live music all over the place, different stages and tons of people, high school age up to adults, and everybody's hanging out doing their thing. And so, but I had FOMO because there was like part of me was like, what the heck is this? I want to be doing this thing right now. Yeah. Like, this would be a lot of fun to go.
I had the same when I was driving through. I was like, and I'm sitting in this car for the next, who knows how long this is going to take us.
And
I'm all, they're all having fun on vacation, and I'm stuck in this car.
Well, and at this point, you kind of hit a wall at some point. I don't know when it happened, but you'd hit it because by the time I got to you, our mileage got off. So I hit where our checkpoint where you should have been based on the mileage, and you weren't there. And I'm like, so I just kept going, and I went another half mile. Finally, I text you. I'm all, where are you? I'm all, did I piss? I must have passed you or missed you or something. And turns out I hadn't. You were still just a little further up. But we get connected, and I'm reading you, and I'm like, oh, she's tired. Like, you're rough. And I'm thinking in my mind, I'm like, we got all night to go. It's one thing to deal with myself, but I'm getting worried about you. And I'm realizing that because we're only doing 3 or 4 mile jumps in between, it's where I could reset with you. I'm realizing that that's not giving you enough time to actually really get a nap, to get any sleep, anything like that.
It gave me enough time to go find a bathroom somewhere.
That was
pretty much all the time I had was drive to the next door and go and see if there was a bathroom.
Yeah, find one that would let you use it. There's not a lot in Hawaii that do. A lot of shops don't. No gas stations, they don't let you use the bathrooms, things like that. But anyhow, so I could tell when we met up. So I got recharged, our normal routine, got some food, got some waffle things, and just drinking some Gatorades. At this point, I'm relieved though because the sun is down. It's the temperature
the weather
significantly better for me.
Much better.
So I'm still hot and sweaty, but it's not beating down on me and like sucking the life out of me, I was very appreciative of that. Very happy about that. And I knew that leaving Kapa'a and heading up north, traffic was going to go away completely.
Yeah.
Right? Because they're just at that time of night, there's no traffic.
So it was like what time was like 9?
Yeah, maybe 9 o'clock at night. And there's no traffic going from Kapa'a up north or Princeville. So I'm like, okay, it's nighttime. There's not gonna be any traffic anymore. So I'll be pretty safe on the road, and the temperature's down. So I'm like, okay, we're gonna be good to go. And so I told you I remember that at that checkpoint, I'm like, let's just double the miles, go to 8 miles. Let's go 8 miles or whatever, and you go, up as far as you can, and go to the check spot or whatever, and then try to sleep. Yeah. Right. So that's what we kind of set out to. You gave me some more toilet paper, just in case, because I'm like, I got to find a solution. I'm like, hopefully I find a solution. And so we go part our ways, and I leave, and as I'm going down, and I cross the road, and I'm over on the ocean side. There's this walking trail that goes right on the ocean. So I'm not even on the main road at this point. I'm like, oh, this is great. And it's awesome, except I've got the grumblings in the tummy that are just not okay. And I'm just like, oh crap. Literally. And so I'm like, I got to handle this. But there's some homeless people that live over there, like on the beach, and they're always, and so I'm like, I don't want like this. It was just awkward. I'm like, I'm not sure what to do. So I'm running on the trail, and I see up on this little ledge on the left, I know there's this big parking lot up there, and I see all these construction vehicles. And I'm like, oh, maybe, because they're construction, they always drop off porta potties. I'm like, oh, please tell me they have a porta potty here. And I see one. I see a porta potty. I'm like, yes, victory is mine. So I scale up the side of this rock wall. I get up to all the construction equipment. They had all the like backhoes and trucks and all that stuff. And I go over to the porta potty, and guess what?
It's locked.
It's locked. They have a freaking padlock on it, a-holes. So I'm like, I can't go to the bathroom in it. And I'm like, at this point though, I'm like, what do they say in the show? You're prairie dogging it.
Oh.
Like there was no options. I'm like,
TMI.
No, this is not TMI. This is what this is the real raw truth of running around an island. This is what happens. And so I'm like, trying to figure out what to do. And I'm like, where this parking lot, the main road is right there. So it's like right off the main road. It's right there. But there's not a lot of traffic, a little bit of traffic though still. Because I'm not fully out of the city yet. But there's no people. I'm looking around. I do the scout. I look around, and then I go over behind the backhoe. And I look around again, and I'm like, okay, I'll turn all my lights off, then no one will notice that it won't look over here. And so I did. I turned all the lights off. And technically, if someone had like shined a light over just from the main road, if they turned into the parking lot at all,
there's your butt.
Boom, there's me. There's me handling my business. So I handled the business right there on the side of the road of the main road. And I'm like, the relief was amazing. It felt, because I was cramping like crazy. And I was like, this is brutal already. I got to stop. So anyhow. So that happened. All right, folks, that happened.
It's fine. It's funny because this last weekend, we went hiking into Lonomea, and I had to go to the bathroom a couple times, like pee, because I was trying to stay hydrated. And so I would duck off behind a rock like you do when you're in the mountains camping, right? And I was running this morning. I had to go to the bathroom, and I had to like convince my brain, because I was on a trail, but I had to like convince my brain that I wasn't in the mountains, and I couldn't just like duck over and go to the bathroom. So I texted Heidi, and I was like, it's really random, but I'm like trying to convince myself that I'm not on a trail and I can't just go, because she had to pee a lot too. Like between her and I, we're super similar. And I knew she'd get a kick out of it, but I was like legit sitting there and I'm all, no, Danielle, you gotta wait till you get home. Like we can run a mile and get back home to an actual toilet and go to the bathroom.
That's awesome.
But it was funny. But like, so I get it. Like I totally get it. But I'm glad that I just feel bad for whoever found that the next day.
It was right
next to a bulldozer.
I didn't do it right on the bulldozer. It wasn't like I did that. No, it was off a way, so they probably didn't even see it. I'm sure some animal came and ate it.
Oh, okay. Well, moving on. So you relieved yourself. Congratulations.
I fed the chickens. All right. There was probably corn in it.
And then you kept running, and
and then it was over.
And then we're done.
It was good.
Yay.
So I hope you enjoyed the show today. So I feel better, and so then I'm out. I'm running. I'm doing my thing, and this is where things get amazing. I should have probably gone and looked at my notes because it's been like a month now since the race, but just I don't want to miss anything of what ended up happening. So if you remember, as I've been leading up to this, I kept saying I feel like something's going to happen at mile 52.
Well, and that was the 8-mile sprint.
Yes.
Yes,
it was.
No, because we hit 50 miles.
Oh, you're right. This wasn't it yet.
We hit 50 miles, and then that was the 50.
You're right. So I
went 8 miles to 50.
We were at mile 42, and we went to mile 50. You're right. So this wasn't that. This was just the 8 miles. And so as I'm doing this, and I remember, okay, yeah, now I'm in the right spot. So as I'm running this part of it, it's a lot quieter. It starts to get really cool, like not temperature wise, but just a cool run. It's dark. There's not a whole lot of traffic, still traffic, but not a whole lot. And it's just, there's not really anyone around. There's not traffic lights or street lights anywhere in Kauai really, other than like in Lahui and maybe Kapa'a. And just a few sporadically, but like where I'm at right now, I mean, I've kind of entered the more, I would call it the jungle side, sort of the
pure
feel
country,
where it's just, there's not houses, there's not people, not a lot of that. And it was just so quiet and peaceful. Right. But the whole time I'm still waiting for, guess what?
Your mile 52?
No, not just necessarily.
Oh, the battle.
The battle. I'm like waiting for the war, like the thing that's going to happen, the thing I watched my brother go through, the thing I've seen other ultra guys go through, the war that I've been through in many other circumstances with this darkness, this dark side when you hit your breaking point. And I kept not hitting it. And I thought maybe in this 8 miles I was going to hit it, but there was still this thing in the back of my mind that's like, well, I'm not to mile 52 yet. So, that's when it's going to break. That's when I'm going to hit this point. But at this point, I don't have headphones on. I'm not listening to music, podcasts, anything. I'm not listening to anything. It's just me and outside. And it didn't feel like 8 miles at all. Like it was very peaceful. It was a nice 8 miles. But that's when I get to you at the 8 miles. Is this when you're asleep?
No.
Not yet. Okay. So, that's right.
No, you told me to go ahead and try to sleep. And then right. I had my own Oh
yeah. So talk to us about what happened to you in this time frame, because I'm not running fast miles at this point, guys. So you probably had 2 hours.
Yeah. So here's the thing about me. I don't sleep very well, period. And I'm a light sleeper. So like the fact that I was like going to sleep in the car on the side of the road, I already knew I'm like, I might get an hour, maybe all night long. And so I drove, and I'm like driving, and I drove to 8 miles to see kind of where I was going to go wait for you. And then I was trying to find somewhere to pull off. But this time it's like late, it's dark, and I'm just worried that someone's going to come and mess with the car. Like if I'm parked on the side of the street. Like right. I was just worried because I don't know the island. Like I'm this side, I don't know at all because we're not really over there very often. And so I see a pullout, and it looks like a business fence, like a business where trucks would go in and out. So in my mind, I'm like, oh, this is great. Like, it's obviously the weekend. There's not going to be anyone coming in and out of this gate, because it was like a gate with a pad, with a lock, like a code. So I was like, okay, well, I'll probably be fine. I could duck, and it was kind of really far off the road, so I could kind of back up to it to where I was really far. So if cars did come, then they wouldn't really see me. They took me like probably 5 minutes to figure out how to turn all the lights off in the car, because there's like I turned the car off, and then I laid down, and I'm trying to sleep, and the road's still glowing. So like I don't know what lights were on outside of the car.
Oh, okay.
So then I was like, I think I have lights on outside of the car. So then I'm like messing with my little switcher thing, and finally I get it all black. So finally it's like totally dark, and I opened the sunroof because the stars were amazing, and I'm sitting there and I'm like, there's no way anyone is gonna see me or come mess with me or I'm in anyone's way. So I lay there and I'm like starting to kind of actually doze off, and I hear this car with like this like crazy like EDM type music like blasting, and I'm like kind of just laughing. Well, lo and behold, it pulls up next to me. Like it comes off of the road, pulls up next to me, and it's sitting there. And I'm laying down, and I have my shirt in the window because the car's coming this way, like to my left. We're shining, so I was like, I can't sleep because I would see the light every time.
Right.
So I put one of my hoodies, I just zipped up in the window. So I'm laying there all flat, kind of hitting it, and I'm just like, but the sunroof's completely open. And then there's this car next to me, and I'm just laying there, and I'm all, I'm like waiting for someone to start yelling at me. And they get out of their car, and they walk around the car, and they punch in the gate code, and then they walk back to their car and turn their car on, and their music's blasting, and then they just take off. And I'm just like laying there. My heart's pounding.
So you were parked right in front of the keypad.
Kind of. Like, yeah, his car couldn't
like he
go,
couldn't.
He could still get into the gates. Like, I didn't block the gate, but I was right next to the key. Not next to it, but close enough.
Close enough that he couldn't get there in his car.
Yeah. I was kind of like centered in the driveway, and I'm just laying there and I'm all, you gotta be freaking kidding me.
Out of all, what are the odds?
So like, at that point, my adrenaline's going because as he walked around the car, I was like, I even said, I'm all, am I in your way? I'm really sorry. Because I was like really worried about being in someone's way and like pulling in someone's driveway.
Did he respond to you?
No, he didn't say anything and just punched the code and then drove away. So I'm laying there and I'm like, I'm probably fine. But then I'm like, well, what if he comes back out? So I'm laying there and it was a perfect spot. It was way off the road. It was safe. Like no one could really see me. And then I swear on my children's lives that there was something behind me, it sounded like when your dirt bike is dead, but you're pushing it up a gravel road. So I could hear the tires on gravel. So I'm like laying there and all of a sudden I hear like slow, like someone's like creeping up on me and I'm all.
This just turned into a scary movie.
I'm like, well, so I'm laying there and I'm all, that's it. So I lift my chair up, push go, like start the car, and I just take off. And I'm all, where am I gonna go now? So then I went back to where the 8 Mile was, where you met me, and I was like, well, and it was actually a busier because there's a neighborhood and stuff right there, but it was a turn off, and so I felt safer, but I couldn't sleep because there was cars constantly coming and going. But I was on the side of the road of like this like store. It's actually where we met to drop Lyric off for girls camp last year. So I was familiar with like
there was the spot at least a little bit.
But I didn't realize how many people, and there was also like a bunch of homeless cars like over in the corner where I could have gone and ducked, but I was like, they're clearly like living in their car. I can't roll up in my car and be like, yo, can I hang with you guys?
Like, yo, what's up, guys?
So yeah, I literally that whole 2 hour, like 8 miles, hey, go rest. I didn't sleep at all.
See, and I remember you telling me you didn't really get much sleep, but you looked exhausted when I saw you, and I was just like, oh, I could tell, and I'm all, that's not good. I'm like, you need to be able to get sleep in between these because it's only going to get worse.
Yeah, well, and I was like, you know how you're just like not satisfied with food because I hadn't gotten out of the car much, like I hadn't moved very much. I'd been sitting and like I was in and out of the car to go to the bathroom and run errands or whatever, but for the most part, I'm just driving, and waiting for you, and so my body at this point doesn't really feel very great. So yeah, and I'm just in that place where I really just was just really uncomfortable. Yeah. And I had bought, I don't even know if I think I told you this. I had bought some Cadbury eggs at Walmart.
Yeah, you told me that you did.
I was like, these are in case of emergency.
I guarantee there's going to be an emergency
and
when
so
it comes
to
Cadbury
those,
eggs.
And I was eating those, and I ate so many that my tongue was like raw, so then my mouth hurt. I was just so uncomfortable. I was just like, it was fine, and I was in it, but that stretch was hard.
Yeah, that was, it sucks because it didn't need, I was hoping it would be different than that. So it worked out okay, but yeah, so I get to you and I'm doing, is this where?
This was right before 52 miles.
Right, but I think I'm physically still okay, right?
Yeah, you were still fine.
Yeah, I'm still all right.
Your knees were hurting you.
Well,
you weren't moving very fast, but you were still okay.
My left knee coming out of Kauai, that was one thing I didn't say. Like, it started hurting. There was the tendon over your top that runs over the top of my left knee was really screaming at me. And it had really I'd started to feel it at about mile 35. And then it got intense. And then at this point, because this is the one where I sat in the car for a minute because I was just trying to recover.
Yeah.
After the 8 miles and getting ready to go, again, took a little longer for me to get out of there. But when I got ready, I remember getting out of the car and I couldn't even stand up. Like, this is that one, right?
Nope.
Oh, we're not there yet?
Nope. You
No.
were stiff. No, the one where you couldn't stand up was after 52.
Oh, okay. All right, so I'm getting
That
ahead
was
of
the
myself.
one that was just after 52.
Okay, so I'm super tired. Super, as far as my legs are tired. I clearly can still move a little bit. I'm not moving quick at this point.
No, you're not running anymore at all. You're just walking.
Recovered from it. Well, there's a couple times I've keep trying to run, but it's not really working.
Yeah, at this point you were done running because I remember that was out of Kauai. You were telling me you tried running a couple times, but you're like, I can't.
Yeah, I was more doing like the speed walk.
Yeah.
I was doing like the speed walk thing and still pacing decent on the speed walk around probably 15-minute miles. But yeah, so this was just an attrition of just continue to keep moving. And anyhow, so I go to leave and I get up and I'm like, hey, it's mile 52 is coming up. Here comes the battle. So in my mind, I'm like, there's the war. The war's coming. It's on its way. The war's coming. And I know what the war feels like. I've experienced this. I've experienced facing my darkness this way and facing just darkness in general and literally facing things that live on the other side of the veil. And I know what it feels like, but nothing was feeling like that. So even as I started out on this, I'm sitting here at mile 50 thinking, all right, I got 2 miles. Next time you see me, I will have gone through mile 52. And so I leave and I get off and I just start going down the road and I'm doing my thing and I'm in the very middle of the road and I don't remember, it's probably 11:30, maybe close to midnight at this point.
Yeah, it was super late.
And I'm in the middle of the road. There's like literally no traffic and I just start talking to God, right? And I kind of started asking him like, what do you want? What am I doing this for? Like, you told me to go on this. You told me to do this and I listened. I'm doing and I'm here. I'm doing what you asked me to do. I don't know the reason why, and I know I don't necessarily need to know why, but I also know you told me to do this for a purpose. So I want to make sure I'm not missing the purpose. And I remember just talking, and I don't remember how long all of the talking and how all of this, the talking went, but I started to just feel the opposite of a war. Like, it was the weirdest thing ever. Like, it was like I was waiting for a battle, and I started feeling light. I started feeling peace. I started feeling like this surrender, this joy, this like, it was just the opposite of a battle. It was like you're going to a battle with anger and frustration and meet the dark and fight through the dark and all this stuff. And I realized that wasn't happening. And then my phone tells me, not my ears, but it tells me, because I just have to show the phone is tracking me and it just says
the lady in your ear.
The lady in my ear tells me the mileage number. It says mile 52. And I'm like, oh, this is it.
Dun, dun, dun.
Dun, dun, dun. So this is like the calm before the storm. It must be this thing, right? And everything just gets lighter, and there is no storm, and there is no battle. There is nothing. It never actually comes. And so I'm sitting there kind of in this peace pocket, and I start to just get these impressions about me. And I start to realize a couple really powerful things. And I would say the biggest, there was a lot that happened, and I wrote it all down because I want to make sure I never forget it. But right now it's interesting. I don't have a great recollection of it. But what I have a recollection perfectly of is that coming out of this experience, like, it was in this moment, this pocket, it was like I saw me for the first time. I saw me. Like, I felt me. And one of the craziest, like, sounds stupid, but I think we all struggle with this a little bit. And to some degree, some people maybe struggle more than other people, but I felt like, I didn't feel like, I knew I was enough. Like, and I knew that the fighting I had been doing, I didn't need to do that. And that I had been fighting to prove to myself that I was enough, but realizing that I already was enough. And I kept just getting these downloads and these impressions into mine and kind of seeing myself and seeing my past and seeing all these experiences. But it was like this place of peace. And I felt totally connected. I felt angels around me. I felt like I was being ministered to. Like when they say that in the scripture, like the angels ministered.
I'm sure you were.
Like I could feel it.
You were surrounded the whole day.
My knee completely stopped hurting. And then I had this realization that I was actually being protected the whole time. And especially in this moment, with mile 52, for whatever reason, my body had broken enough that I could, it was broken enough that it was very obvious that I'd been lifted up in that moment.
Yeah.
So like
It
in
was no
that,
longer in the way. Like your body wasn't in the way anymore.
yeah, I wasn't in the way. And in that moment, I'm literally just being able to see a version of me. And it was just the peace pocket was just, it's hard to describe, but I was there, and I could feel, just literally, I could feel and almost in a spiritual way, see on the other side of the veil and feel the protection. And I could almost see the protection barrier that was around me. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I don't have to fight. Like, that was the whole point. I needed to go through this to realize that I don't have to fight. And the fight I've been choosing is not the fight that I need to be doing.
Well, I think what's interesting when you like told me that story, like I didn't know you when you were younger. Like we met in our adult years.
Yeah.
And just the stories I've heard from you when you were younger, like there was a period of your life, I think, that had created an identity inside of you that you were a fighter. And to some degree, I think being a fighter is really good. But I feel like in your definition of being a fighter, it was not actually productive for you.
No.
And you carried the guilt and some of the shame with that. And from an outside, from watching you go through mile 52 and like what happened with you, it was almost like you saw that that's not actually who you are, and that you don't have to fight, and God will bless you, and you can progress, and you can create, and you can become, not having to constantly throw punches and claw your way out of the pit.
When I think one of the, what you're saying is one of the reasons I became a fighter was because I was fighting to be enough.
Yeah.
I was fighting for validation. I was trying to be validated because I didn't feel like enough. And a lot of that fighter in me came out as a small kid. Like I just didn't, I always felt inferior to my older brother. And I always felt like I had to prove my worth. And so I lashed out because that was the only way I could do it. And if I could physically dominate another person, it validated me as being enough.
Well, and I think it gave you the attention.
For sure, it was
like
attention.
I feel like just knowing some of the things that you've told me about your upbringing and how you felt in, growing up, it gave you attention.
Yeah, it gave me, that's typical, what do they call it? Middle child syndrome.
Mm-hmm.
Like it for sure was that.
Yeah.
But that fighter in me has served me a little bit. And what I realized, this has been what's so interesting, because, and we'll get to the rest of the run, but the rest of the run is quite uneventful. And
Yeah.
there's another really cool thing that does happen in the run.
Yeah.
And we'll get into that. But I see this fighter and all this version of me wanting to go and to do. And I've had a trouble now since the run navigating, figuring out what is Trevor who doesn't fight. Who is he? I know who I am. I saw me in that mile 52. I was given a vision of who I actually am. And I was like, oh my gosh, like I am more than I ever imagined, more than I could ever even picture. I don't have words to describe what I saw, but I knew it was me. I knew it. And in that, God was giving me that gift to show me this. But what was crazy is I found that was me without the fighting. But I'm 45 years old, and all I've known how to do is fight. Everything's been a struggle. Even doing this race, I expected a fight, and I was doing it to fight. Everything was set up to fight, because through the fight became the thing. And I sit in this pocket, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I don't have to fight. And if I don't fight, I'm actually who I'm supposed to be. I'm actually that version, that man. And I've talked about this why I did this and why I was willing to run around the island, because I wanted to meet the guy on the other side. Like I knew there was someone on the other side that didn't exist when I started the race. I knew it. This is why even all the dauntingness of mile 1 and mile 50 and all these miles leading up to where I was at this moment, it was all worth it, because I'm like, I'm going to meet somebody. There's a version of me I'm going to go hunt down. But even that was to fight to find him. And it kind of broke my brain a little bit. And honestly, you made a comment to me the other day where I was trying to get you to give me some honest feedback on me and how I've been. And do you remember what you said about my confidence?
A little bit, but I can't remember exactly what I said.
In essence, you just told me, you said, you're like, I don't, she's like, you've been super productive, but you actually seem more unsure
Yeah,
than I've seen you before.
in a long time. Yeah. Which
And
is
that's,
interesting to me because you saw like you, and since the run, I expected you to show up a little differently, but you've actually shown up very timid in a way and unsure.
which is interesting because I don't feel like I've shown up timid. I've actually gotten more done. I've done more. And so it's an energetic thing that you're sensing.
Yeah.
It's something about your feeling. Because if we were to look at just results of what I've actually done since we come back, it's not been that way.
No.
We've made, I mean, I've done more. I have produced more in just doing and what I've gotten done in the last 3 weeks than previous 3 months, honestly. And the way I see a lot of that. But there is this navigating place where I'm not sure. It's not that I don't know who I am. I do. I'm very aware of who I am. There is a story and a narrative that I've not known who I was. And so that tries to be, but I do know who I am. Right. But I'm so used to saying I don't know who I am, or I'm just my brother's brother. I'm just the little brother. Right. I'm inferior. I'm just him. I'm not me. I'm not Trevor. I'm Garrett's brother. Like that's been such a deep rooted story. But then I realized that's not even there anymore. Like I don't actually believe that, but I'm so used to saying it. I'm so used to that being the narrative of my life that I'll just say it again, and I'm like, "What am I doing?" It's like it's like garbage out of my mouth, and I'm like, "What the?" Ugh.
Well, it's
That's
like
not actually it.
Yeah. Well, it's like anytime you are choosing to change a story that you've believed for most of your life.
Yeah.
That's where that subconscious sabotage comes in. So like you're pushing out of your comfort zone, you're grinding, you're building, but there's this old habit of you like using that. And it's interesting because I was talking to one of my clients about that because I was like, you're going to have a lot of old stories where you're going to feel like, where the crap is this coming from?
Yeah.
But it's because subconsciously you've been telling yourself this for so long that even though you don't feel it, it's going to surface and be like, oh no, remember, you're just little brother Trevor.
Yep.
You're not a powerhouse. Like no. And so it's like, I think it's just, but it's one thing that you did say that you kind of learned at mile 52 was, and we've talked about this before, but like, I think, and a lot of us as humans, like our dark side is always looked at as being scary or negative, or we don't talk about it, or it's like bad. And
well, it's evil.
Yeah, it's evil. And like one of the things that I feel was most impactful for me listening to you recount kind of your experience was that in the dark we create. Yep. And then you think about life, when you're in life and if you're in your darkness, that's when you're creating. That's when you're reaching out to God. Like when we're trapped in our darkness, when we're in dark, we feel like we're in the dark or our dark side's coming out. We're proactive. We're seeking God. We're seeking creation. We're seeking light. Yeah. But when we're sitting in the light, like we're just like sitting in the light. So it's like that's reframed, and that kind of broke my brain because like I firmly believe we have dark and light inside of us. Yeah. And I've believed that for a long time. But the fact that like in the dark is where we actually create and connect to God. When I look at my life, I'm like, when I've connected and had those experiences, it's in my dark. So why are we so afraid of it, and why is everyone so afraid to talk about it?
Because dark has been labeled, and this is what became very clear to me in this experience. And I had a couple little visions that I was given and I saw in this moment. And I sat there, and it was like, we have labeled dark as evil. And because we've labeled dark as evil, we avoid dark, and so we spend all our time in the light. The problem is no growth happens in light. Growth and creation happen in dark, down to the very first scripture in Genesis. God created everything in dark. In the beginning, it was dark. That just breaks your frame. You're like, wait a second. He didn't say in the beginning it was evil.
No.
And then he created everything from evil, right? So we as human beings have associated evil with dark, not realizing that dark is actually where creation begins. And we have a darkness. We're just like God. We have a darkness implanted in us, the same as we have light. And light is there. Darkness is where we learn and create, and lightness is where we broadcast it to the world, to bring others to us, not to find our light, but to find their dark. Because through their dark, they find their light. This is how it happens. I don't take my light and give it to you and you magically have light. I take my light and show you there's light, but you must go through your
And
dark
I must create light
to create your light. You can't have my light. And I think there's a lot of cliches that have gone out there. You can use borrowed light or borrowed testimonies. And I think that's incorrect. I just believe this is the doctrine of me and my experience with God and what I experienced at mile 52 on this run. And it couldn't have been more clear to me. It could not have been more clear to me. And so, but darkness didn't mean fighting.
Mm-hmm.
See, I thought darkness meant fighting. And because I've thought that my whole life, then when I get in dark, I fight and I actually stop creation from happening.
Yeah.
I stop it from happening. And then in my surrender, I go to light because I don't know where else to go. So I go to the light side. But the problem is I didn't grow and I didn't create anything.
Well,
I didn't expand.
Anything. Yeah.
I didn't solve any problems. I didn't move to a new place. And by that whole frame, I'm like, oh my gosh. And that's where my uncertainty in action, I know, not in action, but in just the being, it's like, okay, I know I'm light and I know I'm dark and I know both are magnificent. Neither one is better or worse than the other. Like they're both equal. And in fact, I need both.
Well, they're
of
both
them.
necessary
But
too.
my dark is not aggressive. My dark is not a jerk. My dark is not the bad side of me. My dark is not the devil on the shoulder. That's not what my dark is. My dark is a place of pure surrender. It's pure surrender of not knowing, of unknowing, and surrendering to one thing. It's surrendering to God's will. And in that place, God can meet you and he'll show you what you need to know. And through that, when you walk through that, you make the willing step to trust and have faith. You step through that. There's a light on the other side that is indescribable. But if you don't go through it, you can't see it. It just doesn't exist for you. But in order for you to impact other people, your family, your children, your friends, you've got to be willing to step through this dark, but then you can capture the light. And you capture that light and it becomes a beacon for others. When people talk about seeing the light of Christ, it's people who have gone through their dark and they have accepted it and they found God in that space. They didn't find God in the light. Light was the broadcast of God, but they found him in the dark, but they had to accept it in the dark. And in that space, I think everyone who truly embraces and goes through what I'm talking about experiences dark in a place where there's peace, indescribable peace. It was the peace I was feeling on the run in the middle of the night, stars shining. There was no moon. I'm completely alone. There's nobody around. This island has an energy like no other place I've ever been. I'm completely protected. I'm very aware I'm being shielded. I feel angels, a very specific angel to my right side, who I have felt many times in my life, but my soul could see him, sense him, knew he was there. And I'm walking, he's protecting me, but there are countless also protecting in this place. And this peace comes as I accepted my dark in that moment. And in that darkness, I got to see me and who I really am and the magnitude of what God created and how perfect the design was of me.
What I love about that whole experience is the darkness, like you just surrendered to it
Completely.
and you actually, you kind of sought it out, not in the way of like wanting it, but kind of wanting it. Does that make sense?
For sure, I was wanting it.
I think a lot of us get in this place
it was kind of. I was 100%. That was my whole point.
Well, and I
is
think
to go after it.
Especially as like Christians, like I think we're afraid of the dark and we're afraid of like surrendering to the dark because, and then we feel like maybe we have a story that we're surrendering to, like evil.
Right.
But like when you got to the car after mile 52, like you didn't look any different and you weren't like, there was no, like your countenance looked the same, but there was just this feeling about you of like, like you just learned like a lot. But what I thought was really cool is that it wasn't that you were like, I don't know how I'm trying to put it into words. Honestly, it's like, I respected you and I was like really proud of you for like wanting to go into the dark. I'm not sure why I'm getting emotional and ready to fight, but then realizing that you didn't actually have to fight anymore. I've just watched you fight for so long just to be you. And it's just hard to watch. Cause like it's like last week, I was like, I see you in such a different light And I've always seen you as that person. And I feel like us being on the island has actually brought ourselves back to who we really are in a really powerful way. But I've watched you since I met you just reject part of who you are, and because of like past or things you've done or stories you've carried around, and always been like the younger brother, and there's just all these things that have always surfaced, and you've never really seen yourself the way I see you. And when you got in the car, it was like you saw you.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's who I've always seen. It's like,
Yeah.
so it was, but knowing that the courage it takes for you, knowing you, the courage it takes for you to just surrender and really just trust and then
Yeah.
listen. Like this whole, like, I don't know, I don't like, it's just been such an example to me.
Well, the whole experience for me was based around this surrender. I wanted that. I wanted to meet God. Like I wanted to meet whatever that means, right? Do you know what I mean? I don't know if it necessarily meant I actually did, but I was like, I mean, I have been in absolutely ruthless pursuit of connecting to God over the last few years of my life. And it's just been built on line upon line because I just know that I have no doubt in my mind that that's the path.
Mm-hmm.
That is it. That's the whole thing. And
Well, it's crazy that you say ruthless pursuit because that actually came to my mind and my heart before you said it. Because like, that's when I like, to me, that talk in conference was, and I know for a lot of people it was.
relentless. He used to
Oh yeah,
relentless.
relentless pursuit. But I feel like I have watched you relentlessly pursue him. Like you don't get to this place at mile 52. You don't get to this place where you get to feel peace and where all of our problems solved. No.
Not a single one.
But you don't get to the place where you, and there was a lot of things that were downloaded that you have that are personal and very sacred. But like you don't get to that place unless 2 years ago you start listening.
Yeah.
And you start doing what God plants in your heart, even when it makes no sense and you actually don't want to do it. And fast forward 2 years later, you're in this place where I know you commune with him daily.
Mm-hmm.
And I know you like you have conversations, and I know that like, but because I've seen you like pursue him relentlessly. It wasn't just like a casual, okay, well, I'm going to do this. Like we fall into those habits, you know, especially if you're raised in in a religion, like
Mm-hmm.
you can become very mundane and just casual. But I've just watched you like every day get up and just feast. And I'm just really proud of you and the example you've set for Lyric and Eli. And it's been crazy to watch. And I'm just really proud of you. And I know it hasn't been easy.
No, it's been the hardest, but also the most rewarding thing I've ever done. Right, and there is I just don't see any other path. Like I've always loved the. It's been my favorite scripture for a long time, and I still remember where I was at when I read it the first time. But Second Nephi 32:5, feast upon the words of Christ, who show unto you all things what ye should do. Like through the Holy Ghost, this is it. That's the path. All things. I'm like all things, all things, and I'm thinking, well, God cares about all of us. He cares about everything we care about. Just like we care about everything Lyric or Eli care about. We care about what they care about. Even if it's not of eternal significance, we still care.
Yeah.
Right? If Eli wants to do music, I care about that. So I'm going to help and support him. I'm going to put things in place to help him. Lyric wants to dance. I'm going to help her. So I know God is that way. I know he is without question. So he does care about us. And by feasting upon the words of Christ, what I've found is it's not like it, shows you all things what you should do. It's not like it gives you a map. It's not like he says, well, do this and do this and do that. That's not how it works. Because little by little, when you make the choice to trust him, is when you're stepping into the dark.
Yeah.
And it's the dark that you're afraid of. But that's the very thing that you have to do. And it's the surrender. And the scriptures have become the guide for me because in the dark, those became the map. Even though they don't, Nephi or Alma or whoever it is, they're not talking specifically about Trevor's life in Kauai, Hawaii, or all of this.
But God knows you.
Yes.
And you know it's crazy. So I went on a run with my friend Hillary, and I was telling her about your run, and she had the coolest interpretation. And we were just running, and she was like, and I was telling her just about my journey, my spiritual journey, and how God spoke to me through fitness. And I've been able to really come back to him through investing in the trust through my fitness competitions.
Yeah.
And she was like, you know what's crazy? God loves us so much. He's going to speak to us in the ways we can listen.
Yeah.
And I think for a long time, like growing up, you think, okay, well, God's going to speak to me and it's going to be this one way.
Right.
But like, as I've gone through life and I look at my life, like where God's really spoken to me, he's used things that he knows I love.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you love a challenge. I know God's like, watch, I'm just going to tell Trevor he's going to run around the island and we'll get him for sure. Like hook, line, and sinker. Just
Like,
give him an obstacle
like he'll
that
do it.
No one else can do. No one else can possibly even like fathom doing.
No one else
and
wants
he
to
will
do
it. And
Everyone
he's going
else
to
is
take
like,
the
"You're a
bait and he's
Yahoo."
going to run with it. But it was like, but then you look at like that situation, and he told you run around the island, made zero sense. People that you told you were going to do, they were like, you're kind of semi crazy. Like,
yeah, they're like, what?
I
You're
think
doing
Trevor
what?
White's gone nuts.
Everybody supported it though. That's what was
Yeah.
amazing. Everybody was like, "That's awesome."
Yeah.
But also, I heard people think, "You're doing what?" Like, yeah. It's just like But that's why the what's your 77?
Mm-hmm.
Because I needed to speak to God this way for Him
Yeah.
to show me. Now, what do I do with that? How do I unravel it? I have yet to figure that out. I'm working
I think that's a
on
process.
that. For sure, it is. And I don't know that I ever, I mean, I think it will continue to be a process because more is continuing to be unfolding with me. But like everybody has their 77.
Yeah.
Everybody's got their thing. But like, here's the wild part, guys. Like on the 77, did I run 77 miles?
No,
I didn't.
I can say that now.
You can say it now.
So I got in trouble last week.
You got 2 weeks ago. You like dropped the cliffhanger right at the very beginning. You ruined it. So if you guys paid attention, I actually didn't finish 77 miles. But it was absolutely beautiful. And I completed the run. I just didn't finish 77 miles. And I'll elaborate. So in that moment too, mile 52, I asked God, do I need to keep going? Like, is there more for me? Because it was kind of like that moment happened. And there's things I have not shared here and I won't share. Here, and that's fine. There's lots of cool things that I experienced in that moment, but it was all peace. It was not what I expected. No war happened, right? No battle with demons, none of that I expected. So it was just me. But I asked God, I'm like, do I need to keep going? And he said, hey, yeah, you can keep going if you want, but it's all for you. And I was like, oh, okay. Basically, how I fully interpreted it, and I knew this is what it was, God was like, you can stop.
You're done if you want to be done.
This is what
I give you
this is
permission to
what
stop.
I needed you to get to.
Yeah.
You got there. So it was awesome because I was like, I did it. Like, so there was this moment for me that I was like, I did what God needed me to do.
Yeah.
And not only that, he told me that. Like he said, you did it. This is what I needed you to get, and you got it. So if you keep going, it's for you. But I'm done with you. like
if you want to be dumb and ruin your knees, keep going.
Right. But it was this.
But my hands are clean.
But I'm still only, when I got to you, I was at mile 54.
Yeah.
Right. So I went more than 54 miles, everybody. So I get to mile 54, but that was just a cool moment for two reasons. Because it validated that I'd listened to God. He told me to do this 6 weeks earlier, and I trained. I did everything he asked me to do. I did the run. I got what I needed to get. And then he said it. He told me that. Mm-hmm. He said, this is why you were here. You've done it. Like, that's just a a lot of us are thinking we can't wait till we get to heaven, and God looks at us and says, hey, you did what I needed you to do.
He can tell you that every day.
He can tell you all the time. Like, you just have to
listen.
learn how to listen. And it's easy for me to sit and say it. It's much harder for people to do it. It's hard for me to do it. But I've exercised this muscle in a way I can't even imagine going throughout a day and not talking to God and not hearing him talk back.
Yeah.
Like, I talk to God. He's my dad. I talk to him constantly. I talk to him more than I talk to anyone else in an intense way constantly. He's constantly, I finally get what prophets and apostles and everybody says all the time, like, have a constant prayer in your heart and invite God into all things that you do. What that actually means, like that it's literal. Yeah. It's not figurative. Yeah. It's like an actual literal thing. It's like when you text out the family today for your sister, mm-hmm. right? Say a prayer there. I was like, oh, okay, cool. I stopped what I was doing, pulled up, put my phone away. I was in the gym. I'm sitting there in the gym, and I just sat there and I said probably a 5-minute prayer. And I just talked to God. And I'm like, okay, God, she needs you. I don't know what she needs you for. I don't know if this is supposed to work for her or not. Yeah. But I need her to have peace. So can you send her that? So if you got angels with me, send them to her. I know that works.
Yeah.
Like it doesn't just sort of work. It 100% is a real thing. That's more real than this earth we call life. That's more real than anything else. Right? So God's telling me I'm done. And I knew I could keep going. So now was my choice.
What was your initial thought when you felt that? And you were like, were you sad or were you happy? Were you like, oh, what's kind of like confused?
No,
what do I do now?
I accepted it. No,
is my ego going to push me to break? Like, what was
I just asked?
for you?
Well, I asked myself the question. I'm like, well, I'm almost there. Like I'm mile 52. I don't have that much. Or 54. I'm close. So I'm not going to stop. Like my body felt fine, but in that peace pocket, my body felt amazing. So in that mileage,
because you were being carried.
I was
by
100% being carried.
You were like floating, but you didn't know you were floating.
Yeah, exactly. I was moving, but they were helping a lot. So I was like, I'm going to keep going. I'm not going to stop. Like, God didn't say stop, don't do this. He just said, it's your choice.
Yeah.
You can keep going, but it's all for you.
Yeah.
This has nothing to do with you're done, or you can keep going. So I was like, well, I'm going to keep going. And so I'm like, okay, let's do this. So I get to the car, we talk about it and all that. And then I go to get out of the car.
That's when you were like a baby deer.
I couldn't
My heart
freaking
broke
move.
for you.
My leg. So I done the normal thing, did the electrolytes, did all that stuff. And I go to get out of the car and my legs won't work. They just won't work. I couldn't even hold myself up with them. I had to I'm holding myself with the arms on the car door and the frame of the door. And finally my legs have enough strength to hold my weight up. And I'm sitting there, I'm like, I'm going to be good. I'll work it out. Like I'll get moving. And then once I move because we'd sat and talked for a minute and that was probably one of the longest stops that we'd had the entire run. And so I'd been sitting for a minute and probably like 20 minutes or so, maybe even half hour. Like it was a while we were sitting there.
Yeah, we sat for a bit. And I think both of us fell asleep for a minute.
Yep, we did actually.
Because I remember looking over and like your head's like down and I'm all, so,
I didn't fall asleep, but it was on the verge of that.
Yeah,
I was just like, oh my gosh.
It's like when you blink and you're like blinking for a really long time and you realize that you're still blinking, but you're not asleep. Yeah. You're like, oh, wake up.
But I get up and I start going. And there's another stop after this one. So this isn't the one yet where you sit there and watch me and I question it because I went a whole nother segment because I finished at 62. So I stopped at mile 62. But right now we're only mile 54. So I went a whole nother run. I don't think much happened on that one. It was kind of like my legs are killing me. Mm-hmm. I can't even hardly move. I think you videoed as I'm walking.
Oh, you were like
away,
shuffling.
And I was like limping. And I'm looking at the video of me and I'm sure I'm like, oh my gosh. Yeah. And you still went up to like the 3 miles or whatever.
Yeah, we went back to 3 mile marker because I was rough.
Just
looked rough.
I was just rough at this point.
And it was late, and I'm like, I'm just going to meet you at 3. So we'll see how you're feeling at 3.
So now we finish this one up. We're mile 60 or 58. Mm-hmm. So we finish at mile 58 at this run. I come in, sit down, and I think this is actually when I fell asleep. The first one, the miles 50, the stop right before that, I was telling you about mile 52. Well, I didn't sleep. We weren't that exhausted. It was the next one. Because I remember this next one is when I was like, but I hobbled out of both of those. But the next one is when I was like, because I'm just exhausted. And I remember just having these thoughts of like, kind of in the car, I'm having these thoughts, what am I doing? But not really having the thought that I was going to quit or stop or not do it or whatever. It was just like, what am I doing? This is holy crap. I'm like, and I'm doing math in my head on how many more miles I have and how slow I'm now going. And I'm like, oh my gosh, the sun's going to be up. I'm not.
Well, and at this point, it's like 3, 4 in the morning kind of, and traffic's going to start. It would actually started picking up. People coming like
there was a few. There still wasn't traffic,
but
yet, it was
the rest of your run was going to be on these narrow little roads,
but no shoulder,
in the middle of it's going to become morning really fast. So I was actually a little bit worried, and I was just like, I'll support you with whatever.
Well, in my mind,
I was hoping you would quit. I'm like, please be done.
Well, in my mind, I'm trying to think, how can I? But I don't think I told you this. I hadn't told you at this point that God said I was done.
Yeah, you did.
Oh, had I already told you that? Okay, so I
because you told me at when you told me about mile 52, you said,
okay,
he told me I'm done, so I'm going to keep running.
Oh, that's right. That's right. And you're like, I'm here for whatever you, if you're done, you're done. If you're not, right. But at that point, I wasn't ready. And now I get to 58, and I'm like, I get out of the car, can't freaking stand up again. It takes me like 5 minutes just to get out of the dang car, and I'm trying to move and stabilize, and I start going. Right, I start going down the road. and you're watching me. What's going through your head? Because I'm right in the middle of the road, just walking down, and you can see me, my little lights and all this stuff.
Not really much of anything, just supporting you, and I'm exhausted, so I'm just shoving more sugar in my face, trying to stay awake. And
But I know you were more worried than you had ever been because you didn't go down. You didn't go very far.
no, well, I passed you, and then I just kind of pulled off.
But hold on,
even
before you
3
get to that,
miles.
because there's a cool thing that happens here. So I go out before you even take off from where we were stopped at. I don't know if you were paying attention or not, but I go out and I stop. I'm like maybe 200, 300 feet down the road from you, and I stop. Do you remember this?
Yeah.
So I'm sitting in the middle of the road, and this was the first time I was like, "What's going on here? Like what do you know?" And I'm like, what do I do? And I need to go, and I not. I'm like, I'm gonna go. And so then if I'm like, screw it, Trevor, don't. I'm like, the fighter in me came back, and he was like, literally, he's like, don't be a freaking punk. Like, just go. Like, you can do it. Like, so it was the fighter in me showed up, and then it was like, so then I just start going again. And then you come driving past me. You don't stop. You kept going. And then you get a little ways ahead. You hit your brakes. You come up to that first corner. You hit your brakes. Do you remember what happened there? It was really cool.
Yeah, well, there was like a turnaround spot. And so I turned into that, and I was like, because I was really worried about you. And but I pulled in, and I was just going to sit there and wait for you to catch up, basically kind of like babysit you, because I wasn't very far from you. And as I'm sitting there, I just got a prompting of like, nope, he's fine. Don't sit here. Like, you need to keep going. Like, go to where he told you to go. And so I was like, okay. So I just drove to where the 3 mile marker that I was supposed to, because it was like a mile and a half. I think it might have been a mile.
You didn't go the full distance. Yeah.
No.
You didn't go the full 3, but you stopped. You were probably only like 500 feet in front of me.
Yeah.
And what's crazy is when you pulled off on the side of the road, I was like, I'm going to quit. See, and at this point in my mind, I was quitting.
Yeah.
Like I was like, I'm done. I can't do this. Am I physically, like there was a limitation. It was not good. Like I wasn't in a good headspace right then. And you'd stop there, and it would I think after you told me that, when we were talking about it later, I was like blown away. I'm like, holy crap. Because if that had happened right then, I would have missed another really, really cool experience, like a really cool experience. But you didn't. You listened. God works with us. We're like on this big chessboard.
Yeah.
You're worried about me. You stop. God says,
He's fine.
He's fine, and he's mine.
Yeah.
I got him. Go.
Yeah.
He doesn't need you. Right now. There's something else coming for him.
Yeah.
So just go. And so you go.
Well, it was the weirdest feeling, because it was like I was sitting there and I'm worried, and I just got this prompting of like, he's fine. Like, you can't sit here. Like, you just go. Like, you can't. Lily was like, you can't. It was kind of like an usher came to the door and was like, you can't sit here. Move along.
Like, move it along.
I was like, okay, fine.
Move it along. And so you pull out, and I watch your car disappear in the lights. And then is when, what's crazy, had you stayed there, you would have robbed me of this. That's what's so crazy about this. Because then what happens is I start identifying that the fighter's out. And I'm like, what the heck is what? And so then God comes back in, and he basically rebukes me, and he says, Trevor, what are you doing? And I remember just having this distinct thought in my head, and I'm like, and it was not me, it was coming directly from God. And I'm like, he's like, I told you were done.
Stop
Why
fighting.
are you still fighting? And it just hit me like a tomahawk missile. Why was I still fighting? Oh my gosh, that's the old me. I start laughing out loud as I'm moving now at this point. I'm walking down the road, and I'm laughing out loud because I'm like, oh my gosh, that's the guy who started the race, who's fighting now. He's trying to stay alive.
Yep, because you're killing him.
And he's like, no, we fight, we push, we go, we are extreme, we do.
Yeah.
And God literally came down. He's like, you're done. I gave you the choice because I needed you to see that this side of you has to die. It's not who you are.
Yeah.
So stop. You're done. And then crazy enough, my body felt amazing. And then I was able to get to you really fast. I got to you, and I told you what just happened. I'm like, we're done. I'm done. But then we looked at where we were at, and I'm like, okay, we were 1 mile away from Princeville.
Yeah.
The little shop there in Princeville. And I checked with God. I literally, you guys listeners may think I'm just an idiot. I did. I checked with God. I'm like, am I good to go to Princeville? Like I'm a mile away. I just want to get to that city. There's a stop there. It's kind of an exclamation point.
Yeah.
It's like this moment. Right now we're in the middle of a road, no people, nothing there, whatever. And I'm like, am I good to go there? And God's like, yes, you can go there. That's fine. He's like, but you're done. And I'm like, yeah, I'm done. I get it. And so then you drive off to the grocery store there. And I'm like, just that last mile it was amazing. And I'm just finishing this last mile. And I'd like, not only had I completed it, but I didn't have to fight anymore.
Yeah.
That's why I think you have experienced me the way you've experienced me since that race, because I've lived 45 years as a fighter, and God made it really clear I'm not a fighter like that. That's not like that.
Yeah.
Right. And that I don't know how to navigate it. I don't know how to experience it. Like you said, all our problems in our life haven't gone away. There's some of the problems are still right there in front of our face. Nothing changed. But what's weird, it almost scares me. There's a part I get scared because I don't have a sense of fight to solve some of the things that are in front of me. I'm doing lots of things to solve it.
Yeah.
But I'm not fighting to solve it. And so it almost makes me feel like I don't take it serious.
Yeah, I can see that.
Right? There's this part of me that's like, well, dude, are you just being the freaking bum who's going to go sit on the couch and not take care of the problem? I'm like, well, no, I'm clearly not doing that.
Yeah.
Like I'm doing lots of things and I'm moving all the direction, but like the fight has not been there in me.
Well, I think it's the anxious Trevor. He's not there.
No, I don't have that.
Like there's not, because there was always an anxious, angry energy about you.
Yeah.
And I haven't felt that, but that was also the energy that would get stuff done. So then a part of me is like, you know what I mean? It was the aggressive.
I wonder if that's the perception of the confidence that you don't see me having, because that comes off very confident.
Yeah.
That's alpha male at its highest.
Yeah.
Right. I posture up and I out alpha people, which shows up. That's total confidence. It's like, he's a dude who's going to freaking handle things.
So it's kind of like a dude getting a big truck. He's like compensating for something.
Yeah. And now I can drive a Prius and I don't care.
And you don't care. Well, and honestly, like one of the most impressive things in this whole entire experience was you sitting in the car and just saying, I'm so good to be done right now.
Yeah.
And you actually said something that was really powerful. You're like, it took a lot of courage for me to do this. And if you know Trevor personally, you'll understand this. And if you're a competitive person, you'll probably maybe understand some of it. But the courage it took for you to do this and start 77 miles was awesome and amazing. And you had to have a lot of courage to just take it on. But the courage it took for you to acknowledge that you were done and to be done far outweighs the initial courage that it took for you to even start.
It took way more courage for me to listen to God that I was done. 100% it did. And to not fake it.
Yeah. And to not feel like you're quitting.
It, and to feel, I don't.
That's one thing I asked you in the car. Remember, I said, tomorrow morning when you wake up, are you going to feel like you failed? Because if you're going to do that, we're going to finish this race. And we're going to finish it. And it's going to suck really bad. But there's no, but you're like, no, there's no regret. Like,
and
zero regret.
I tried to dig inside of me to find the regret. Was I justifying when I'm making stories up? And I'm like, no, there's pure peace.
And has there been since?
Not a single time.
Yeah.
Not a single time. Like,
which
not
is awesome.
A single
and that's pretty
time.
Impressive, actually.
I don't know how. Well, I do know how.
That's not, because that's not your normal characteristic at all.
No, because to me, on all intents and purposes of logic, I quit.
Yeah.
Right. Oh, you didn't finish. You said you were going to do this and you didn't do it. I mean, I preach this every day to my clients, to the world.
Yeah.
Do what you say you're going to do. Right. Which is very, very true. It's a very valid thing. Yeah. But in this space, there's also there was a window, and it was just, I've never experienced it like this. None of this I've experienced like this. I've never, and now I'm not sure what to do. And I'm calling myself to the carpet right now as we are talking through this, because I have not done enough work to find more answers into my experience. And what am I supposed to, how do I navigate with this now? Help me find the footing that I need. I also feel like I have the footing. So I don't know that there's a whole lot of digging that needs to happen.
I don't. Sometimes I think we overthink it. Like,
right. I think it's just a mode of, it's just a mode of, this is I'm much more passive-ish, but not really. I'm still aggressive.
Well, you're just peaceful. I don't think you're passive.
There you go. That's because passive's not the right word.
It's like you're in the eye of the tornado and you're calm. You're not.
Yeah, there's just a calmness. Yeah.
Beating cars out of the way. You're just sitting there going, okay, well, how do I? And you still navigate out of the tornado, and you're still productive, but you're just peaceful.
Well, I'm navigating 10 times more.
You've actually amped up everything that you've got in your life right now, like 10x what you're doing, but you're just really peaceful. So it's just it's an interesting place to watch you in because
it feels different. Lifting weights is different. Like hitting the gym has been different because it's like I want to get big, I want to get bulky, I want to be this beast, this big physical, and then I'm like, I'm tired. My body's worn out. But then there's like, no, I still want it. I'm not going to, but it's been different. There's a different, I could usually tap into an angry energy really easy. That angry energy just isn't there.
Yeah.
And it feels weird, but I don't not like it because what I see is I'm actually being more productive. I'm accepting, embracing, and I feel no need to justify to other people.
Yeah.
I don't feel a need to especially to my brother. I don't feel a need to explain to him my life or why I'm not what he thinks I should be, and whatever that is. And he's great. I love my brother, and he's an amazing. None of this is even his. It's not. He's not done anything. It's me. This is all the me story. This is a me problem. This is a me thing I've had to fight through. He's not even aware of 99% of it, which is just fine. He doesn't need to be. This isn't his. Has nothing to do with him. He just became the what would I say, the symbol.
Yeah.
The symbol of all this.
Well, he was what you anchored a lot of your stories too,
and
then you realized that a lot of that wasn't even true.
No, none of it is, and he doesn't even think those things that I would think.
Yeah.
Right, and so, but I've let go, and that's what's so interesting is I'm in this space, and I'm like, I have nothing to justify to anybody, to no one except God. This is the only one I feel like I need to have those conversations with.
Yeah.
To justify anything and to have conversations when I screw it up and to go to him and let him lead and guide what I need to do, how I need to do it, and where I need to move forward. And what I know with absolute perfect certainty is he's there and he answers and he tells me what to do.
Yeah. Well, I think shows me. The biggest lesson for me in this whole thing is like God's going to meet you where you're at.
Yeah.
He's not going to expect you to come somewhere where you're not capable of going, for one. And he's not going to expect you to do something that you're not capable of doing, two. And three, he doesn't really care what it is. He's going to meet you where you're at.
Yep. And this idea that you have to be in light and have this perfect checklist of things done in order for God to accept you, in order for God to embrace you, in order for God to love you, in order for God to help you
and bless you
is so absolutely ridiculous. Now, we will put ourselves into positions where we can't really be blessed, right? You go off and do something stupid, get yourself put in prison.
There's consequences.
Yeah. There's two ends of the stick.
But he will meet you where.
But he's going to hang out with you in prison.
Yep.
Like he'll meet you do there. It with you there. Like he's always there. There's always opportunity to move forward. It's us who push away. It's not the other way around. Right. And the ultimate blessing of him, every part of this. And it's just very frustrating to me when I see people who beat themselves up because they've done something or made a mistake, or maybe they didn't live up to their potential that they thought they were supposed to. And the only reason it frustrates me is because it's been me for my whole life.
Because you see yourself in them.
Yeah. I look at that and I'm like, oh my gosh, that's a miserable place to be. Like, and especially people who think they're supposed to do something great on this earth. There's a lot of people that think that. They think they have this big calling, this big mission. And then a lot of people miss, quote unquote, that big calling and that big mission. But did they really? Like, that's a ridiculous thing. It's a ridiculous statement. And God's sitting there the whole time and he's got you. He literally has his hands on you. He's not, I mean, it's just crazy to me how twisted people have gotten with the narrative of how God operates, the way he cares about you and the way he loves you. And you have your 77. I don't know what it is. Everyone has their way. But in order for you to get to that 77, you got to start with what's your one. Mm-hmm. I don't just start with 77. I start with years of pursuit. Different
and it's just trusting and it's just opening your heart to start listening.
It's the very definition of exercising
accepting.
Faith.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I just been like, okay, well, this is what I'm pursuing faith. So I need to then open up my heart and listen.
And you do it when you have no faith at first.
Yeah. And
you just do it because you want the faith. Right. If you remember my pursuit of really going into this in religion in general and spirituality, it was like, I don't even know what's true, what's not true, but I want to know. So I'm going to go start doing things that would help me know that.
Yeah.
Right. And God just little by little would throw me little things like, okay, do this. Okay, do this. And I've always wanted a connection to God. So I maybe gave him more credit than I should have. I don't know. I don't think so, because I don't think the outcome's been bad. But there's always been this drive for me to have this connection, and I've just fostered and built it. But he would tell me to do things that I thought at the time were outlandish and crazy.
Yeah.
Like when he told me to go back to the temple, just to get a temple recommend. And I'm all, what? God, I'm not really down with the whole church thing. I'm like, and you just told me to do what? I mean, it was the funniest interview ever with the bishop and the stake president. because I didn't dishonest to him. I told him why I was there and what I was doing and why I was doing this and all of that. And I know the bishop was like, he was like, not whatever. We don't talk bad about anybody, but he was I'm glad he, was at least inspired enough to at least approve it.
Just let you.
But then I got in with the stake president, and it was an emotional. Him and I are both in tears as I shared with him why I was there and what I was doing. And we had an absolutely amazing experience as I'm getting this, that final signature to go in. And then I get the paper that says, hey, I can go to the temple. And I'm like, what the heck am I supposed to do with this? And then it took a couple months. And then God's like, hey, why don't you go to the temple? And I'm like, what? God, again, back to the whole, I don't really like this whole church thing. I'm like, why would you want me to go there? I already did what you told me to do. And he's like, yeah, I know you did, but let's do this now. Let's do this side. And I'm like, okay, fine. So I go to the temple one time and I'm like, okay, I went. And he's like, well, it's good. You should go again. Just go again. Just go again. It'll be fine. It's, just next time, just do it again. And then I go again, and then all of a sudden there comes this time, this one day, and I'm like, wait a second, I kind of like the temple. How'd that happen? I don't even like church, but I like going to the temple. Temple's kind of cool. Go to church, I'm like, church sucks, but the temple, that's a cool place. Then God was like, hey, I have this idea. It's really crazy. It's gonna be crazy. It's gonna blow your mind. You should start reading the Book of Mormon. And I'm like, God, probably shouldn't. I have no interest in that book. It's a boring book. There's not a single picture. The stories are hard to follow. Half of them don't even make sense to me. I'm like, really? And God's like, just try it. Just come on, just do it. And I'm like, okay, I'll do it. I'll just read it. So then I start reading it, and I get through it, and I finished the whole thing. I was like, I'm going to do it. All right. The fighter was still there. He was like, I'm going to fight. So I read through the whole thing. God's like, good job. And I'm like, thank God, I did it. I nailed it. I've been going to the temple. I read the Book of Mormon. I'm in. I'm done. I'm done all you asked me to do. And he's like, hey, Trevor, over here. And I'm like, oh, you got more? What do you got? And he's all, read it again. And I'm like, what do you mean read it again? I just read this stupid thing. You want me to read? I'm like, okay, I'll read it again. And then all of a sudden there came this moment. Do you remember this time when I came to you? And I said, babe, I woke up today and I realized I was craving scripture. What? And I'm looking at myself in the mirror.
Who are you?
And I'm like, what is going on? Who is this guy? But all this time, God was speaking to me the whole time. And he was giving me where I was at. He was meeting me exactly where I was. If God had come to me and told me what he's telling me now, back then, I wouldn't have heard a word he said. I wouldn't have listened. I would have ran. I would have been like, yeah, not today. This is not God. You must be Satan. Because that's not happening. You're an idiot. There would have been no chance. But he met me where I was at every step along the way, leading me just here a little, there a little, till now he can tell me things he couldn't tell me 2-3 years ago. But well,
and I think so too, though, even though he tells you something, he doesn't expect perfection in the instruction. No. Like he didn't say, hey, go to the temple and now you're going to be perfect and now you're going to live perfectly and you're not going to make any mistakes. And no, it was like, hey, just get the recommend, just get it and see.
That was where it started.
And that's kind of how it started with me too. It was like, but he didn't expect, even in that, he knew I still have doubts and he knows I'm still working on my testimony, but there's no pressure.
Yeah.
He's like, it's just about the baby steps. And I think we grew up in a very pressurized environment.
For sure.
And so now not having that pressure is actually quite cool because your testimony actually can grow from an authentic, raw, real place.
It's your testimony.
And it's mine. It's not
my testimony. It's not your parents' testimony. It's no matter what everyone's good intentions are. It's not any of theirs. Yeah. It's yours. Yeah. It's you and him. It's the relationship with your personal revelation with you and him.
Yep.
Like that's it. That's what matters. And he'll lead you where you need to go. One thing I was very open to through this whole process for me was the fact that I was very open to the fact that if he led me away from the church I was raised in, I was open to that.
Yeah.
I was totally okay with it because I knew I was following God and I knew God would lead me to where I needed to go. And so I was open as I started doing these things. I'm like, he may be having me do this just to show that it's not the thing for me.
Yeah.
Maybe that's what it is. Right. That ended up not being the case. But yeah. So final thoughts before we wrap up this very long podcast. Hopefully you guys have been able to bear with us. This was a powerful experience though. And we wanted to be able to share.
Yeah. I think my most powerful thoughts is like just the realization that God's going to meet us where you're at. Like for all the listeners out there, like no matter what you're going through, like what you're interested in or things that you have felt on your heart, like he's just meeting you where you are. And he doesn't expect perfection. He doesn't expect 100 billion% commitment, but he expects us to just trust and follow.
Yeah.
And in that, our faith will grow. And then before you know it, you have become who he knows that you can become. And you can stand in the middle of a tornado with peace, which is what he wants to give us as children. Like, he wants to give us love, and he wants us to feel peace and love. And I think that's his ultimate goal.
Yep. I agree 100%. Right. And this is where it comes to, the question I'll kind of leave everybody with is really understanding, what does your journey need to be? Where you're at is perfect. It's beautiful. It's exactly where you need to be. You haven't missed anything. You're not a step off. You haven't missed the opportunity. You've not missed your moment. I don't care if you're 16 or 69 or 79 or 102. Like, it doesn't matter where you're at in the journey. You're right on time to where you're at, because the pursuit is always there for you to listen. And he's there. He's talking to you now. And so my encouragement for every single one of you is to spend some time, whether it's on your knees, standing up, laying in bed, whatever it is, and just talk to him. Just speak to your dad, right? He's your dad. One of the greatest prayers I ever heard was from a friend of ours, John, back in the day. Had an event that we were going on, and it was the most sincere prayer I'd ever heard, and it sounded like he was talking to his father. Like, it was the most amazing. Like, he started the prayer. He's like, "Hey, what's up, Dad? It's me, John. I'm here with these guys." And then he went into the prayer, and it was just so real. So do that, right? If you don't know how to pray, just talk, right? But I promise you, without question, like, if you will do this, you'll find out what your 77 is. You'll find out what your journey needs to be in order for you to find the peace pocket that you can find. That it's your next. It's where you're headed. It's the next step for you. It's the next place for you to be. So appreciate you guys being listeners of the show. If you got value from today's show, share this show up. I know we covered some pretty deep conversations and concepts today. So if you know somebody who's struggling or somebody who might get value from it, share the show with them. Maybe brighten their day a little bit. And we appreciate you. You guys over on YouTube, go ahead and give us a like and a subscribe. We appreciate it. We appreciate you guys being fans of the show, being fans of this journey called life. So this is the Pine, from Pine Tree to Palm Tree. This is Trevor White signing off.
Good night.